Our guest today is Jennifer Swain from Road to Logistics. Thanks for joining us, Jennifer. Tell us a bit about your business.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on your podcast. So Road to Logistics is a not-for-profit. We were established in 2020 with some seed funding from the Department for Transport to essentially tackle talent shortage in logistics. So everything we do is aimed to train and bring into the industry fresh blood, very much within HGV, both Cat C and C+C level, and also in warehousing, and we give our learners an MHE qualification. So the premise of what we do is very much about supporting people that face barriers to employment, and removing those barriers so that they can get access to the vocational training to allow them then to enter a career in logistics as either a driver or within warehousing. And our training is very much informed by our learners. So we support people that are long-term unemployed. We support young people, care leavers, people who are economically inactive, particularly young people who are not in education, employment or training. We work with a lot of people with neurodiversity. We support ex-offenders, we support veterans and people who have been homeless. So essentially it's a huge banner, but it's all under this umbrella that it's individuals who are really struggling to get into meaningful employment, but really want to. And we've got just hundreds of amazing case studies now of people that we've supported into the industry. So essentially all of our programs are government funded, and they are linked to all of our programs that we link to employers. So we make sure we've got employers on board that are happy to take our learners and that need staff. And so we ensure that our learners have a very definitive pathway into employment. We offer work experience. We can bespoke the training so that the employer actually can contribute to some of that pre-employment training to make sure the learners are fully up to speed. And as well as all the vocational stuff, so yes, everyone comes out with a standard HGV license or a warehousing with forklift truck qualification as an example. But what we also do is spend a lot of time in the classroom getting our learners work ready. And that's for two reasons. First of all, we recognise that part of the reticence of employers for taking on new drivers is about the fact that when someone just takes themselves off, does their theory, does their practical, actually what their knowledge base is at that point compared to what a commercial driver is there's a big gap, and that worries some employers. So what we do is we try to bridge that gap by giving them a lot of theoretical knowledge around things like driver's hours, compliance, and we give real life case studies of what happens if you hit a bridge. What consequences does that have for you? What consequences does that have for the organisation you work for? What happens if your vehicle stopped and checked and it doesn't meet the criteria? What implications are there for you personally and for your company? And we go into all of this. We do customer service, making our drivers very aware that they're often the face of their company, and quite often the only person that the customer will ever meet from that company in a lot of cases. And so we just try to make sure that we bridge that gap as much as possible. And it seems to be working because since we started, we've trained 702 people. 89% of them are now working in the industry, and 94% of them are still with the same employer after 12 months. So what we do is absolutely working.
Great, that's fantastic. And what brought you into the lovely world of logistics yourself?
Like most people, I probably couldn't say I fell into it really. So I went to uni, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but knew that I wanted it to be very people focused. I spent 12 months in IT sales, which I absolutely hated. And a few people said to me, you'd be really good in recruitment, you'd be really good. And I went for interviews with about 5 different companies. And one of them was this place called Supply Chain Personnel. And I was like, supply chain? What's that all about? So I went very intrigued to this interview. And obviously it was actually a 6-stage interview process. It was, sort of very old school back in the day, where you did psychometric tests and you name it. But obviously during the process they started talking to me about supply chain and logistics, and like a lot of young people, I'd never even really heard of it or haven't given it much thought, because it's not in the curriculum, which is another story for another day, David, but it's a big bone of contention of mine. And that was my foray, and I guess I was very, very lucky. I was there for 5 years, and they were a really good recruitment company, so I got some very good training. But what was central to it all was that I had to interview face to face at least 2 candidates a day, and these were all sort of managerial, professional level supply chain managers, transport managers, logistics managers, forecasting, purchasing, procurement, and it gave me a really, really good theoretical understanding of of the supply chain world. To the point where, as I progressed in my career, I started looking at more interim management, and I go into employers in supply chain, and they tell me what they thought they needed, and I will be able to say, well, actually, what I think you need is X, rather than what you've and the reasons why. And it got to the point where I went to see this small civil engineering business who were having real problems with stock control and losing money and all sorts of stuff that was supply chain linked. So I gave them some advice about what they needed, and they said, well, you sound like you know what you're talking about. Do you want to come and do it for us? So I said, okay. I was 25, I had no commitments. It seemed something a bit exciting, and I absolutely love supply chain. I found it fascinating. So it was an opportunity for me to actually go and walk the walk rather than just talk the talk. So I did that for 3 years, loved it. Saved them they were only about a 4 million turnover company. So once I put in all the right stock control practices and made sure the supply chain was robust and the procurement was sorted, there wasn't an awful lot for me to do. So at that point, I set up my own recruitment company, taking everything I'd learned, to be able to say that I've been there and done it. Did that for years, and then went internal and worked for Clipper Logistics as their head of talent for 3.5 years. Set up something called Fresh Start, which was all about providing opportunities to people that face barriers to employment. And then, hey presto, that landed me at Road to Logistics, and I've been here now for 5 years. Started as head of talent, promoted to director of talent, and recently in January made managing director. And I absolutely love it. I couldn't think of a better job, to be honest. It's so rewarding. I feel very privileged to be able to help the people that we support.
Good, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And what do you see as the biggest opportunities and threats for what you do in the sector over the next few years?
Obviously, to me, the biggest opportunity is the fact that we still experience a lot of pain around talent in the industry. I still think there's a lot of work we can do as an industry to become more attractive and appealing. I don't think we're very good at selling ourselves externally. We have all our awards and conferences and magazines, but you step outside of logistics and you ask somebody what logistics is, and you just get a blank stare. Or I get, oh, is it about statistics? I go and talk to lots of kids about and careers fairs, and I can count on one hand out of the hundreds of kids I've spoken to that actually understand what logistics is, and it's usually because their parents work in the industry. So I think there's a huge opportunity here to make a real impact and make a difference to how we access talent, how we appeal to talent, and how we bring more people into the industry. I guess for us, the biggest threat is the fact we are a not-for-profit. We are very reliant on government funding. It's not easy to get, and I can tell you that I'd say 80% of a lot of my team's time is spent on compliance, on administration, to ensure we can get paid, which is frustrating because it takes us away from the core of what we're able to do. We could train so many more people if it wasn't so compliance heavy. So I'm trying to address that threat by looking at other ways that we can raise funds for Road to Logistics. And we've recently become a part of the RTITB, which we are very excited about. It's a really great move because the RTITB are very much have the same vision and values as we do around transforming lives and how we support our industry and how we keep people safe within our industry. So it's a big move for us that they've allowed us to be charity partners at their health and safety summit for the past couple of years, which has allowed us to raise funding through raffles. So I'm very keen to sort of say to the industry, look, we're doing great things, we're really supporting not just the people that we help, but actually the employers who need staff. And what would you like to do to support us, essentially, and maybe throw that out there for people to have a think about.
No, thank you. And maybe that ties into the sort of next question. Question we always ask everyone: what are people in the sector not talking about that perhaps they should be?
So I think it's quite prolific in our sector that we do talk about what struggles we have, whether that's around low profit margins, whether that's around not being able to find drivers or what have you. I think the frustration I have is that we still have the same conversations that we were having 20 years ago. And there's a lot of, well, we can't do that, or no, we've got insurance issues, we've got this, we've got that. But not many people are open to change, or not as many people as there should be. And I think, that Road to Logistics demonstrates that if you do think a bit differently and you do things a different way, it can work. And when we are living and breathing that every day. So I guess it's more about, people changing their limitations in some ways and actually thinking, well, why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? It's Einstein's definition of madness, isn't it? Let's embrace change and let's try new things to see if they work, rather than keep doing the things that don't work just because you've always done them.
You're absolutely right, and part of the reason set up Logistics Explained is to give something back to a wonderful industry, because it's been good to me and my family. It makes UK PLC tick, but we just don't see it. And as consumers, we all take it for granted when we order something, a pallet, a parcel, something from America, it magically turns up, and we never think of all the pain and the flights and customs. But no, that's really good. Does the green transition that everyone's going through, where everyone wants to be greener, but no one wants to pay for it, and that's the truth, does that affect what you do?
Not hugely, although what it has done is we've started to introduce some more modules around sustainable driving, about low carbon driving, how you make sure that you drive as efficiently as you can to help protect your employer's sustainability, carbon footprint, etc. So there are elements, obviously, as well, electric vehicles coming in. We have access to modules that can give training on that type of thing. It's not a huge part of our day-to-day, because obviously we're not an operator, we are a training provider. So I suppose we have less of that expectation on our organisation. We're a not-for-profit, we all work from home, we haven't got an office that's creating sort of a carbon footprint or anything like that. So it doesn't affect us massively, but we are aware of it and how that can impact the roles within driving or warehousing, and we have implemented modules that will educate our learners on those issues.
No, that's good. That's really good. And during your career, what development in maybe the logistics sector has surprised you most?
I wouldn't say it surprised me most, but one thing that's been fascinating to watch is the automation side of things. So when I worked in Clipper Logistics, we had these massive warehouses with all sorts of different types of automation for hanging rails, for for picking and packing, what looked like Daleks that were just shooting around the warehouse, and it was absolutely fascinating. And picking up on the point that you mentioned earlier, David, about what an amazing industry it is, it's stuff like that we should be pushing out, because it's fascinating, it's cutting edge, it's very appealing to young people. So I don't think 90% of young people actually understand the advancement in technology that's in logistics. And as you said before, they'll go on the phone and they'll go on Amazon or Pretty Little Thing and they'll press a few buttons, and as if by magic it turns up on their doorstep the next day. There's a huge amount of capability and technology that's gone into making that happen. And I think as an industry, we need to start making that much more visible, because it will help us attract people moving forward.
Yeah, maybe, like you say, celebrate it as well. Celebrate the success, and no, you're absolutely right. And the final question I ask everyone, and perhaps because obviously the funding will probably be very pertinent to yourself, if you could ask the government or speak to the government, what would you ask them to do to help your business grow and flourish?
Give us some money, David, in a nutshell. We did a social value impact report last year, and it demonstrates that for every pound the government have given us, we've given back £6.50 in savings and revenue. So that's taking people out of the benefit system, taking people out of the judicial system, that cycle of reoffending. We absolutely stopped that, because to me, there is no greater way to rehabilitate someone than through training and employment. So our reoffending rate is less than 4%. So all of that has a huge financial benefit to the government purse. But as well, we're creating meaningful taxpayers, because, of course, lorry drivers are earning on average about £40,000 a year. So, we're not taking people and putting them into minimum wage jobs. We're putting people into careers with career development and relatively good salaries that has had a big impact on the savings. So to me, it's an absolute no-brainer. If they were to give us another million, then their return on investment would be huge. I'm not saying that asking them for $1 million, that would be wonderful if they gave me that. But any amount would help us and to ensure our sustainability.
No, that's really good, and and they'll get return on investment, and it's a wholesome enterprise, isn't it? Which is great, because the industry is great and it makes the world tick. So no, great, wonderful. And I just want to say thank you very much, Jennifer, for joining us today and going through your things. And I hope that through this it helps you raise awareness for employers that may need some people, and you can do training for them, and obviously hopes the government continues to support you and sponsor you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, David.